The Trump administration just appealed a ruling from a Trump-appointed federal judge that threw out an aggressive Justice Department lawsuit. That lawsuit had tried to sue all 15 federal trial judges in the state of Maryland. Now, the underpinning of that case, Maryland courts temporarily blocking the Trump administration from quickly deporting undocumented immigrants if they challenged their removals. Now, that ruling was on full display in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia this week. That's the undocumented immigrant who lived in Maryland, who is now in ICE custody as he challenges his deportation, threatened to go to Uganda, it's a country where he has absolutely zero ties. Joining us now, CNN crime and justice correspondent Caitlin Polans and CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig. And Caitlin, let me start with you. This judge laid out some rather fiery statements in this rebuke of the Trump administration's unusual lawsuit. And just to remind people, this is a Trump-appointed judge.
Okay, this is the moment Trump's legal team has been dreading for years. A federal judge just issued a ruling that completely obliterates Trump's primary legal defenses and clears the path for prosecutors to move forward with criminal trials. We're talking about a comprehensive judicial rejection of every argument Trump has relied on to avoid accountability. Presidential immunity, denied. Executive privilege, rejected. Delay tactics, shut down. The judge didn't leave any wiggle room, didn't give Trump's lawyers any openings to exploit. She systematically dismantled every defense strategy and made clear that Trump will face trial as a private citizen accused of serious crimes. The ruling explicitly states that Trump has no blanket immunity for criminal acts, that being president doesn't shield you from prosecution for personal criminal conduct, that Trump's attempts to falsify business records, make illegal hush money payments, and deploy National Guard troops for political purposes are not protected by presidential immunity. This is the legal equivalent of stripping away all of Trump's armor and leaving him exposed. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Two-time Trump appointee Thomas Cullen, a conservative royalty in the state of Virginia, brought into this special case overseeing it in Maryland. And his opinion today was, get this out of this court, full dismissal. It doesn't belong here. And he wasn't going to let it go forward resoundingly. He writes, none of these cases that the Justice Department was arguing in this case support the executive's theory that it can sue federal judges simply because it disagrees with how they carry out their constitutional and statutory duties. To hold otherwise would run counter to overwhelming precedent, depart from longstanding constitutional tradition, and offend the rule of law. That's a pretty strong statement from Judge Cullen in this. Backing up what this was about is that it's not a normal case. This was in Maryland, where the chief judge of that district just earlier in the Trump administration said,
and the implications extend far beyond just one case, because this ruling establishes precedent that will be cited in every Trump prosecution, federal cases, state cases, civil cases. All of them can now point to this judge's clear rejection of Trump's immunity claims. Prosecutors who've been waiting for clarity on whether Trump can be tried as a private citizen now have their answer. Yes, absolutely yes. The judge didn't just rule against Trump's immunity defense. She went further and addressed all the procedural technicalities Trump's lawyers have been using to delay trials. She found that these tactics have failed, that they won't work anymore, that courts are done with Trump's strategy of endless motions and appeals designed to push trials into the indefinite future. The message is clear. No more delays, no more procedural games. Trials are happening, and they're happening soon. Legal analysts watching this unfold are calling it the beginning of the end for Trump's ability to avoid criminal accountability. One expert explained that prosecutors are now getting the green light to move forward with conviction and sentencing, that the case stands, the charges stand, and Trump is going to have to face a jury. This is what Trump has been fighting desperately to prevent, because facing a jury means facing evidence, means having prosecutors lay out detailed proof of criminal conduct in front of 12 ordinary citizens, means risking conviction and prison time. Trump's entire legal strategy has been built around avoiding that moment, claiming immunity, so cases never get to trial, using procedural delays to push trials so far into the future that maybe something changes, maybe witnesses die, maybe he wins another election and can pardon himself. But this judge just took all those options off the table, said immunity doesn't protect Trump from these charges, said procedural delays won't be tolerated, said trial is coming and is coming soon. Trump's legal team is reportedly in crisis mode. They built their entire defense around immunity and delay. Now those foundations have crumbled. They have to actually defend Trump against criminal charges on the merits, and the evidence against him is overwhelming. The specific ruling came in a case involving Trump's illegal deployment of National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. Judge Karen Emerald found that Trump broke the law with that deployment, that he exceeded his constitutional authority, that he can't claim immunity for those illegal actions. But the significance goes way beyond that one case, because the judge's reasoning, her clear statement that Trump has no blanket immunity for criminal acts, applies to all his criminal cases. Election interference, classified documents, obstruction of justice, hush money payments, falsifying business records. None of these are protected by presidential immunity. Trump can be prosecuted for all of them. And with the immunity defense destroyed, Trump has no viable way to avoid those prosecutions. He has to go to trial, has to face juries, has to risk conviction. And the timing couldn't be worse for Trump politically. He's already dealing with multiple crises, legal troubles mounting, his base showing signs of fracture, public rejection at events like NFL games, political allies distancing themselves. And now a federal judge has cleared the path for multiple criminal prosecutions to proceed rapidly. The judge specifically rejected Trump's attempts to use procedural technicalities to delay trials. She made clear that courts are aware of Trump's delay strategy and aren't going to allow it anymore, that motions will be ruled on quickly, that appeals won't automatically stop proceedings, that trial dates will be set and enforced. This accelerated timeline is devastating for Trump, because every month of delay was a month where he hoped something would change to save him. But with trials coming quickly, possibly before the 2026 elections, Trump faces the real possibility of being a convicted felon while trying to maintain political power and influence. The electoral implications are enormous. How do you campaign for Republicans or maintain party leadership while sitting through criminal trials and potentially facing convictions? The ruling also establishes important precedent for future presidents. The judge's clear statement that presidential immunity doesn't protect criminal conduct sets a legal standard that will outlast Trump. Future presidents now know they can't use the office as a shield for personal criminal activity, that leaving office doesn't end legal jeopardy for crimes committed while president. This is a fundamental shift in American accountability. For decades, there's been debate about whether presidents are effectively above the law, whether the only real accountability is political through impeachment. This judge has answered definitively, no, presidents can be criminally prosecuted for illegal acts. This ruling is the domino that starts everything else falling. With immunity rejected and delays eliminated, Trump's prosecutions will accelerate, trial dates will be set, evidence will be presented, juries will deliberate, and convictions are likely given the strength of evidence prosecutors have compiled. Trump is facing the accountability he's avoided his entire life, and there's no legal mechanism left to save him. So let's break down exactly what this judge ruled and why it represents such a comprehensive collapse of Trump's legal defenses. All right, let's dig into the specifics of Judge Karen Emerald's ruling, because the details are absolutely critical here. The case before her involved Trump's deployment of National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. Trump had claimed this was a legitimate exercise of presidential authority, that as commander-in-chief, he had power to deploy troops for security purposes, that courts shouldn't second-guess his judgments about threats and necessary responses. His lawyers argued that even if the deployment was questionable, Trump couldn't be held liable because presidential immunity protects his official acts. Judge Emerald systematically destroyed every single one of these arguments. She started by examining whether the deployment was actually legal. She looked at the statutory framework governing National Guard deployments, the constitutional limits on presidential power to use military forces domestically, and Washington, D.C.'s home rule authority that gives local officials control over law enforcement and security. Her conclusion was unequivocal. Trump's deployment was illegal. He exceeded his authority, violated federal statutes, and infringed on D.C.'s governance rights. But the really significant part of the ruling comes next, because Trump's lawyers argued that even if the deployment was illegal, Trump can't be prosecuted or held liable due to presidential immunity, that his actions as president are shielded from legal consequences. Judge Emerald rejected this argument completely. She explained in clear detail why presidential immunity doesn't work the way Trump claims. Presidential immunity exists to protect certain official acts from liability, actions taken within the scope of presidential duties that might otherwise expose the president to lawsuits or prosecution. For example, policy decisions or exercise of constitutional powers like vetoing legislation or issuing pardons. But immunity doesn't cover criminal conduct, doesn't shield illegal actions, doesn't protect presidents who break laws for personal benefit or political advantage. Judge Emerald found that Trump's National Guard deployment was not a legitimate exercise of presidential authority. It was illegal conduct, an abuse of power, and therefore not protected by immunity. This reasoning is devastating for Trump's other criminal cases, because in every prosecution, Trump has claimed immunity, has argued that as president, he can't be held criminally liable for actions taken in office. But Judge Emerald's ruling establishes that immunity only protects legitimate official acts, not crimes. Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election through fraud and pressure campaigns on state officials, those aren't official acts protected by immunity, those are alleged crimes. His retention and concealment of classified documents after leaving office, not protected by immunity. His falsification of business records to hide hush money payments, not protected by immunity. None of Trump's criminal conduct falls within the scope of presidential immunity, as Judge Emerald has defined it, and prosecutors are already citing her ruling in other cases. They're telling judges that Judge Emerald has definitively resolved the immunity question, that Trump's blanket immunity claims have been rejected, that trials should proceed without further delay on immunity grounds. The judge also addressed Trump's procedural delay tactics. She noted that Trump has filed countless motions in various cases, challenging venue, questioning evidence admissibility, seeking recusal of judges, demanding more time for discovery. Each motion requires hearings and rulings. Each delay pushes trial dates further into the future. This is a deliberate strategy. Keep cases tied up in procedural fights for as long as possible. Hope something changes. Hope witnesses become unavailable. Hope public attention moves on. Judge Emerald made clear she's aware of this strategy and won't allow it in her courtroom. She wrote that procedural technicalities will not shield Trump from facing a jury, that courts have an obligation to ensure justice isn't indefinitely delayed, that defendants don't get to abuse the legal system to avoid accountability. She set an accelerated schedule for the case before her, short deadlines for motions, quick rulings on disputes, trial dates set firmly with no tolerance for attempts to delay, and she signaled that other judges should do the same. This part of the ruling is almost as significant as the immunity rejection, because Trump's entire legal strategy has been built on delay. He doesn't really expect to win on the merits. The evidence against him is too strong, but he thinks if he can delay long enough, maybe he avoids trial entirely. Maybe he wins another election and pardons himself. Maybe key witnesses die or become unavailable. Maybe prosecutors give up or lose momentum. Judge Emerald is taking that strategy off the table. She's saying courts will not allow indefinite delay, trials will happen, and they'll happen on reasonable timelines regardless of defendant preferences. Legal experts are calling this a watershed moment, not just for Trump's cases, but for how courts handle high-profile defendants generally. Because wealthy, powerful defendants often use delay tactics successfully. They have resources to file endless motions, to appeal every adverse ruling, to drag cases out for years, and often the system allows it because courts are reluctant to be seen as rushing justice or denying defendants their rights. But Judge Emerald is establishing that there is a difference between protecting defendant rights and allowing abuse of the legal process, that courts have an obligation to move cases forward on reasonable schedules, that delay tactics have limits. Her ruling explicitly states that Trump will face trial, that evidence will be presented to a jury, that conviction and sentencing will follow if the jury finds guilt beyond reasonable doubt. This certainty is important because until now, there's been ambiguity about whether Trump would actually face criminal trials, whether immunity claims or procedural delays would prevent trials from ever happening. Judge Emerald has eliminated that ambiguity. Trial is coming, conviction is possible, sentencing could follow. Trump has to prepare for those realities rather than hoping to avoid them through legal maneuvering. The ruling also addresses the argument that prosecuting Trump is politically motivated or represents persecution. Judge Emerald made clear that courts determine guilt or innocence based on evidence and law, not politics. That if prosecutors have evidence of crimes and proceed through proper legal channels, trials happen regardless of the defendant's political status or claims of persecution. Trump doesn't get special treatment, negative or positive, because he's a former president and current political figure. He faces the same legal system as any other defendant. This rejection of the persecution narrative is significant because Trump has built his political defense around claims of witch hunts and political prosecutions. He tells supporters that he's only being charged because Democrats want to destroy him, that the legal system is being weaponized against him. But Judge Emerald's ruling makes clear that these are legal proceedings based on evidence, not political vendettas. Trump is charged because prosecutors believe they have proof of crimes. He'll be tried because the evidence meets legal standards for prosecution. If he's convicted, it will be because a jury found guilt beyond reasonable doubt based on facts and law. Politics doesn't enter into it except in Trump's own rhetoric. The legal community's reaction to this ruling has been intense. Former prosecutors are saying this is the moment that shifts everything, that Trump's legal jeopardy just became real and immediate in ways it wasn't before. Defense attorneys are noting that Trump's team now faces an incredibly difficult situation. They have to defend indefensible conduct with no viable legal shields. Judges across multiple jurisdictions are already citing Judge Emerald's reasoning. Prosecutors in New York's hush money case have referenced the ruling in arguing that Trump's immunity claims should be rejected. Federal prosecutors in the classified documents case have pointed to Judge Emerald's analysis of what presidential immunity does and doesn't cover. Georgia prosecutors investigating election interference have cited the ruling's rejection of delay tactics. This is becoming the template for how all Trump cases proceed. Immunity rejected, delays eliminated, trial accelerated. It's a domino effect where Judge Emerald's ruling in one case influences outcomes across all Trump's legal battles, and Trump's legal team has no good response. They can appeal Judge Emerald's ruling, but appeals take time, and in the meantime, other cases are proceeding based on her precedent. They can keep arguing for immunity in other courts, but those judges will look at Judge Emerald's thorough analysis and likely adopt her reasoning. They can try delay tactics, but judges who've read Judge Emerald's ruling will be alert to those tactics and shut them down. Trump's lawyers are running out of moves, running out of arguments, running out of time, and their client is facing multiple criminal trials with overwhelming evidence against him and no viable defenses. Okay, let's break down what Judge Emerald's ruling actually means going forward. Point 1. The definitive rejection of Trump's blanket immunity claims eliminates his primary legal defense across all criminal cases and forces him to defend against charges on their merits. This is the single most significant legal development in Trump's prosecutions since indictments were first filed. Trump's entire legal strategy has been built on immunity, the claim that as a former president, he can't be prosecuted for actions taken while in office. That presidential immunity shields him from criminal liability even after leaving office. Judge Emerald has destroyed that defense completely. She's established that immunity only protects legitimate official acts, not criminal conduct. That Trump's alleged crimes, attempting to overturn an election, obstructing justice, falsifying records, none of these are protected by presidential immunity. This means Trump has to actually defend against the charges, has to argue that he didn't do what prosecutors claim, or that his actions weren't criminal, and given the evidence prosecutors have compiled, those defenses are extremely weak. Documentary evidence proving Trump's involvement in various schemes, witness testimony from people who were in the room when Trump gave orders, physical evidence like classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago. All of this will be presented to juries, and Trump's team will have to try to create reasonable doubt. That's a nearly impossible task when the evidence is overwhelming and you can't hide behind immunity claims. Point 2. Judge Emerald's rejection of procedural delay tactics signals that courts are accelerating Trump's prosecutions toward trial on expedited timelines. This timeline acceleration is catastrophic for Trump's hopes of avoiding accountability. His strategy has always been delay, push trials as far into the future as possible, hope circumstances change, hope he can win another election and pardon himself, hope witnesses become unavailable or memories fade. But Judge Emerald has made clear that courts are aware of this strategy and won't tolerate it. She set an aggressive schedule in her case, and other judges are following suit. Trial dates are being set in multiple jurisdictions. Discovery is proceeding on accelerated schedules. Motions are being ruled on quickly. The delays Trump was counting on aren't happening. This means Trump could face multiple trials in 2026, potentially before the midterm elections. He could be sitting in courtrooms as a criminal defendant while trying to maintain political influence and support Republican candidates. That's a nightmare scenario for Trump politically and legally, because each trial is another opportunity for conviction, another presentation of damning evidence, another round of devastating headlines, and each conviction makes the next one more likely because juries and judges see patterns of criminal behavior. Point 3. The ruling establishes precedent that will constrain all future presidents and reshape American understanding of presidential accountability. This goes beyond Trump. Judge Emerald's clear statement that presidential immunity doesn't protect criminal conduct sets a legal standard that will apply to all future presidents. They now know they can't use office as a shield for illegal activity, that leaving office doesn't end legal jeopardy for crimes committed while president, that accountability is real and enforceable through criminal prosecution. This is a fundamental shift. For decades, the assumption has been that presidents are effectively above the law while in office, that impeachment is the only real accountability mechanism, that criminal prosecution of sitting or former presidents is virtually impossible. Judge Emerald has shattered those assumptions. She's established that presidents can and will be prosecuted for criminal conduct, that immunity has clear limits, that no one, not even the most powerful person in the country, is truly above the law. This will influence how future presidents think about their actions, will make them more cautious about crossing legal lines, will remind them that leaving office doesn't mean escaping consequences. That's exactly the kind of accountability American democracy needs to function properly. Point 4. Prosecutors across multiple jurisdictions are already citing Judge Emerald's ruling to advance their cases, creating a coordinated legal assault that Trump cannot effectively counter. This coordination is devastating for Trump. In the past, Trump's lawyers could fight battles separately in each case, use different arguments in different courts, maybe lose one case but win others. But Judge Emerald's ruling creates uniformity. Prosecutors everywhere are using her reasoning. Judges everywhere are adopting her analysis. Trump faces the same strong legal precedent against him in every case. He can't forum shop or find friendly courts that might accept his immunity claims. Every court is citing Judge Emerald and reaching the same conclusions. This means Trump's legal team is fighting a coordinated assault on multiple fronts with no viable strategy for winning. They've lost the immunity defense everywhere. They've lost the ability to delay significantly. They have to defend multiple cases simultaneously with overwhelming evidence against them in each case. That's an impossible situation, and Trump's team knows it. Some lawyers are reportedly considering withdrawing from his cases because the situation is hopeless, and continuing to represent him damages their professional reputations. Point 5. The public nature of the ruling, in its clear, accessible language, means voters and the public understand that Trump's legal shields have collapsed and accountability is coming. This isn't some obscure technical ruling that only lawyers understand. Judge Emerald wrote in clear, direct language. She explained why Trump's immunity claims fail, why his delay tactics won't work, why he will face trial and potential conviction. Media coverage has made this accessible to general audiences. People understand that Trump's legal defenses have crumbled, that he's going to face criminal trials, that conviction is a real possibility. This public understanding matters politically because Trump can't maintain his narrative that he's being persecuted if judges are clearly explaining in accessible language why the prosecutions are legally sound and proper. He can't claim witch hunts when courts are methodically explaining the evidence and legal standards. His supporters might still believe him, but moderates and independents see a legal system applying law equally, holding a powerful defendant accountable through proper processes. That's what Judge Emerald's ruling demonstrates, and that understanding among the public makes Trump's political situation worse, even as his legal situation deteriorates. So where does this leave us? With Trump's immunity defense definitively rejected, with his delay tactics exposed and shut down, with trials accelerating toward dates in 2026, with overwhelming evidence ready to be presented to juries, with Trump's legal team out of viable strategies, and with political implications that damage Trump's influence and standing, Judge Emerald has cleared the path for Trump's prosecutions to proceed quickly and effectively. The legal shields that protected him are gone. The procedural games that bought him time are over. Reality is catching up. Accountability is coming. And Trump faces the very real possibility of multiple criminal convictions that could result in decades of prison time. This is the nightmare scenario Trump has been trying desperately to avoid, and Judge Emerald just made it inevitable. The path to prosecution is clear. The path to conviction is straightforward, and Trump has no way out.